Andrew, there's been so much stuff that's really changed over the last year, particularly whether it is in restaurants or a lot of the different things that you've been involved in with traveling and all of the media. But what have you really been up to over the last year? And like, how has like kind of COVID changed? This, I guess, kind of emerging out of this post-pandemic world. How has that, like, what kind of an impact has that had on your day-to-day, like your lifestyle these days?
Well, it changed everything in a sense. There were also some small, big events in the year prior to COVID in 2019 that drastically affected and reordered the things that I do on a regular basis. It's funny. We won an Emmy for the Zimmern list, a show that we were doing for Travel Channel. When we won it, COVID had just started, so there was no awards ceremony. It was all virtual.
Wow.
And we won it for a show that didn't exist anymore on a network that didn't exist anymore, because in 2019, Travel became a ghost and paranormal station and changed its name to Turville, TRVL.
Wow.
It had a vowel movement. It lost its vowels, and it was the most bizarre, pun intended, sort of scenario. I should have seen that as a portent of things to come, like a black crow landing on the window in my castle, right? It would just be like, oh, I mean, if it was the Middle Ages, everyone would be pretty freaked out.
Right.
So COVID hits, and we lost a bunch of restaurants, and have rejiggered that. So our hospitality company has changed its focus dramatically. We also closed our concessions business in all of our stadiums.
Wow.
Which was crazy, because during that first year of COVID, remember, there was no people weren't attending.
Oh,
and
yeah,
if they were, it was on very limited basis. So the master contractors, the Aramarks and of the world, were completely redoing their food systems within these buildings, because they had to as well, right? I mean, they were taking it in the shorts. We still have one booth at Target Field for baseball. That was always helped because it was outside, so they could stagger people. And, it's a large enough stadium with enough games. Like football is outside in many places, but there's only a certain number of home games per year.
Right.
So it's not exactly great to be in a football stadium doing business. It is if you're in multiple football stadiums. So that got hit in a very, very crazy way. And then the production company that I own, which is Intuitive Content, got dinged pretty hard, because networks and everyone was just like, okay, stop. And people forget that in 2020 and all throughout, from March all the way through to January 2021, network streamers were no one knew what was going to happen with COVID. So they were out there pushing a lot of content that they had mothballed. They were doing very safe things, like relaunches and stuff like Cobra Kai, right?
Right.
Super safe. Relaunching Netflix, relaunching Queer Eye, right? Mm-hmm. Super safe move, right? That's where they were focusing, not on brand new programming, risk taking, or the other things that media entities sort of have to do to get the biggest hits in media are often the biggest swings and the biggest risks, right? The most ridiculous thing you could possibly, imagine. And when those work, they're epic. And so, kind of like investing in the stock market, big media companies like to spread out their portfolio between safe bets and very risky bets.
Right. Spread out some of the risk.
Yep. And so a lot of potential business went away, and business slowed down a lot. We're seeing it now pick up. We're seeing buyers come back to the table. I'm doing different types of food service now. We're looking at much smaller footprints with single item concepts. Look at how many. I mean, Rich, you guys know this. I mean, how many? I'll just pick a number. Top 500 chefs in America. Top 1,000 chefs in America. If you were able to somehow aggregate that group and agree on who the top 1,000 are, how many of them opened a pizza or burger concept over the last 18 months? All of them.
Right.
90% of them, right?
Right.
So people are going for a safer bet at a lower price point because they know that things are costing more. It's almost like chefs intuitively and restaurant owners intuitively knew that inflation was coming. I'm making a lot of Game of Thrones references, and I'm not a Game of Thrones geek. The Black Crow on my windowsill, or inflation is coming. But I do believe that people in the food business, number one, are the greatest people on planet Earth, but number two, because they intersect with farmers, growers, ranchers, insurance people, new immigrants, legal and illegal, single moms and dads who are working in the restaurant and need the odd hours or whatever to augment a second job. First-time job seekers, last-time job seekers, returning citizens from jails and institutions. I believe food people have a finger on the pulse of what's really going on in America, and always have. Right. It's a unique wisdom skill set. And I believe it is something that we all saw because we had to make those fast decisions. I mean, everyone opened a pizza concept or a fried chicken sandwich concept because we knew that it was too risky to raise $2 million and put it into, just on and on and on and on and on. You couldn't do the big swing because the business atmosphere was too risky. So, and we read into that and, are pursuing the same sorts of things. It's just, it's tough when you're trying to do 3 jobs at once. I think at the end of my career, I will look back and say, boy, I wish I'd only just done one thing. Right. But I'm physically and emotionally incapable of doing that.
Some people just aren't wired that way.
It's a weakness. It's a weakness I fully concede that I have.
Yes.
Do you think it's a weakness? Now that you said that, actually is just popped to my mind that most of the chef, the cooks, and everyone is kind of like looking to do 2, 3, 4, 5 things. And I mean, I remember back in the day in the school, like not even in the culinary school, like I don't know how you call it here, I forgot, but it's kind of like your professor, they were always telling you, or even your parents, they were always telling you, like, you either do one thing right, but do not do like 6 or 7 wrong. And right now, I can see that in the culinary field, at least, that everyone is trying to do so much that they don't really accomplish anything, or they just like finalize one, and all the other ones they just live and hanging to dry or something like that.
Well, let's look back at the last 2 years. I mean, you're not wrong. I agree with you. First of all, food people are, I mean, a lot of us are sick fucks. I mean, we just have, we gravitate into this art world, right? I mean, it is, I mean, there's the craft and there's the business of it.
Right. Oh, there's the passion in art though, for sure.
The passion and artistic side of this thing, I think, is something that grabs at our hearts and pulls us in first and foremost, right? So a lot of us are just, as Richie said, wired differently. Number two, when economic times are low, and I'm 60, I've lived through 2 different really big recessions, right? in our country's history, and I've lived through them restaurant wise, and it was awful. I mean, it was as bad as COVID.
Yeah.
In the late 80s in New York City, 30% of restaurants closed. I mean, that matches up with what we're seeing now in COVID.
Yeah.
I think a lot of restaurants are dead. They just don't know it yet. We might get saved by this thing passing through quickly. I hope there's nothing that comes behind Omicron, but let's just
Right.
fingers crossed we don't lose more restaurants. But when people look at food service entities, they always look, and Rich, you've had the opportunity to work at several places that had more than one revenue stream. But independent restaurant operators are always being told by their business advisors or a savvy investor or their business partner who's the suit, right? They're always being told you have to find a way to ring the register at some points of the day other than 11:30 to 2 p.m. and 5:30 to 10 p.m., right? You have to. So during COVID, you saw restaurants do meals to go and delivery, home cooking packages, right? Here's a recipe and the goods, grocery store and pantry items. They started food lines, right? I mean, besides the pizza and burger thing, more chef friends of mine started their own. I make my own salsa and we're selling it. We do our own line of these condiments and sell it. I mean, everyone is trying to expand their offerings
right
across a greater amount of time, because you can order spices online any time of day. The problem is a lot of us don't have the business resource setup that is necessary to support that, or the investment necessary to support that and grow it.
Right.
And that is the difference between the people who make it in those other areas and the people that don't. It's fascinating to me how quickly everyone is diving into things like Gold Belly and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, right.
Where the dollars are very big. I mean, Buddy Velastro is selling 15,000 cakes a year on
Gold Belly.
And, I don't know what his deal is, but if he's making $10 a cake, off of the $40 price, do the math. Right. So that's a fine deal for someone like that, but not everybody is finding that success on Gold Belly. Right.
Right.
You
still got to have a brand or a name that people are going to gravitate
and not
toward.
everybody. And even the people with brands and names are not crushing. I mean, they're getting small checks. There are restaurants that very successfully pivoted into home meal delivery kits where they're cooking it themselves, online offerings, all that kind of stuff. I was having a conversation with Nick Kokonis, who is the business partner at Alinea and Royster and the group
with
that he
Grant,
started, Alinea Group. And Nick very early on figured it out. I mean, he's one of the smartest operators that there is in America. And during COVID, at one point, he told me that they were doing about 75% of the previous year's dollar gross revenue by doing all these 3, 4, 5 different things, right? Alinea at home, the to-go pickup, the meal kits, but all that kind of stuff. He figured out how to do it, and they were doing it with less people. And his point of implication was, when all is said and done, we actually may be a little more profitable. Right. Now, that's not the sexiest kind of business, right? So we all want to open our doors and see guests back in our building. But look at how many people have opened their doors, have guests back in their building, and are still offering some or all of those things that they used during COVID to get by. Right. So it's to get back to your question, it's affected me tremendously. I elected to not. I think we furloughed one person for like 6 weeks I think that was it at all of our different companies. Now, we shuttered restaurants. I had to tell, 150 employees at one place, hey, we're not going to open. The door is going to be shut permanently. It was one of the worst days of my life. But a lot of other people did too. We just saw the writing on the wall. Even if we opened back up again 6 months later, that lost revenue would take so long to make up, and the food I determined the food game had changed significantly.
Oh, totally.
And so the type of, higher end, blah, 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 150 seats, 2 PDRs was going to be too difficult to manage for a restaurant that had just opened prior to that. We didn't have a 5-year run up and had built customer loyalty and all that kind of stuff. So we're trying different things. I think it's going to be a very, very different restaurant and food world that we open up and live into over the course of the next decade. I'm very excited about it. I think where there is a burnt down forest, there is tremendous opportunity for new growth. And it's going to be really amazing to see where that sits.
You brought up some really good points, Andrew. And, I think about the one with the risk and how media has maybe been more reluctant to take some of those bigger risks during that time. But connecting the dots with the restaurant industry, also in the future, being more careful. Like if you are a business owner or you're a chef and you've got this dream to open up your restaurant, I think now people are going to, you're getting ready to sign maybe a 10-year lease. There's a lot more questions that you got to start asking yourself, like, think about, when there was the shutdown and imagine your restaurant, you're still paying all these bills and you got all these perishables, and then, you're closed for 3 months and your staff has drifted away. It's almost like reopening. So I agree. I think some of these, like, maybe smaller, more focused concepts. And also you brought up a really good point about maybe more broader market appeal, food that's craveable, that everybody loves, and just doing it really, really well. If chefs, I think, it's just kind of also in our nature. Sometimes people will, maybe their ego or their, the food, it's like, no, I want to do food like this. But, you have to be able to keep the lights on and pay the bills and keep your team working. And so there's a lot of responsibility, I feel like, now moving forward as with industry leaders, people out there opening their places. You really got to think about what your steps are, because it's just far more complicated. But as you mentioned, I also think there's tremendous opportunity out there. It's exciting.
Christopher, referred to it as well. We all want to do 6 or 7 things, right? Well, maybe it's better to focus on 3 that all sort of align together, that can be created with the same staff, right?
Right.
And we also have to remember something that we haven't talked about at all, which is that restaurants were broken before COVID.
Yes,
I mean, there's several systems within a restaurant, but the one that I think is not getting enough attention. Well, let me rephrase that and tell you what is getting a lot of attention. What's getting a lot of attention is very, very, very important. It is the most important thing. How we treat people, how we organize our businesses, how we care for people within our building. We have to put our employees first. I mean, there are several industry leaders, obviously Danny Meyer, most famously, everyone refers to it. Take care of your staff first. Otherwise, you have nothing to offer anyone else. Right. And now people are understanding that's true. Right. We have mistreated people in restaurants. There has been, pay inequities based on skin color, position in restaurant, gender, all of that stuff. Incredible sexism. There have been restaurants very famously with abusive systems built into them that were never corrected. A lot of this stuff is necessary to have the light of day shown on it, so the horrific moldy creep of that disgustingness can be eradicated, right?
Well, I think the culture was even kind of accepted it.
Well,
in the industry.
I mean, look, when it goes on for so, I'm 60. I mean, when I first started working in restaurants in the late 70s, it didn't shock me when I walked in the door.
Yeah.
Of my first restaurant job when I was a teenager working summers, what I saw was like, oh, this is how a restaurant works. Yeah. When I look back on some of that stuff, some of it was really cool and really great. I mean, legitimately. Yeah. Other parts of it were, when I look back on it, are kind of horrifying. And this was in a woman-owned restaurant, right?
Wow.
But there's been a lot of talk about that. We still need more. It's an important issue. It's not resolved by any stretch of the imagination. So I don't want to give anyone the implication that I think we're sort of like, oh, handily done with that problem. No, this requires our focus and attention for a generation to come to eradicate it from our industry and bring it forward to where it needs to be. But here's what has gotten less attention. And I think it is something that we need to really, really, really be talking about as well. Not in place of, but as well. And that is the brittle economic systems within restaurants and not charging dollars for a plate of food that we should be charging for. So a very interesting thing happened. I had a lecture series at the CIA campus in California right before COVID. Mm-hmm. And COVID killed it. One of the things that ended, it was a great lecture series. 4 times a year, I would gather people for an important discussion. We'd spend a day on campus and spend a lot of time with students who I think they're our next group of leaders, right? So right. It was a wonderful place to have these discussions. And we talked about all these big, ugly, horrifying issues. Tracy Desjardins told an incredible story. She had just closed Jardinière about 3 months before we were talking to her at the campus in a formal setting. Jardinière, for those that don't know, for 20 some odd years was one of the handful of best restaurants in America. Obviously, Tracy is a legend, and her San Francisco flagship restaurant was one of the preeminent restaurants in America for a generation. And she told me a very interesting story when I asked her about the closing and what customers' reaction was to surcharges and this, that, and the other thing. And in giving me this story, she gave me more information on another issue than I ever could have hoped for. She said when she opened Jardinière 27 years ago, the chicken dish was $19.50. It was roasted chicken. It had a beautiful sauce on it. It had some vegetables and some little, pomme souffle or something. It was more European in the way it looked than the chicken dish that was on her menu when she closed. But, and I don't want to say, like Gertrude Stein, a chicken is a chicken is a chicken. But a chicken is a chicken is a chicken. So she was getting a bespoke bird, right? I mean, from a farm, she was way ahead of the curve. She wasn't buying, frozen Purdue chickens, right? So here's this beautiful chicken on a plate. And, every restaurant, when it's like, okay, need that chicken dish, whatever. She had this great roasted chicken dish. So 25 years later, when she closed, that chicken dish was $24, right? It was like $4.50 more expensive than when she opened. But every other cost that she had, and she started listing them off, payroll's up 1,200%, rent is up 1,500%, insurance is up, prices are up. Every single other internal cost she was battling was up, which is why between the 80s and the 2020s, restaurant profitability has gone from between 8 and 15% to around 7-8%, right? It's a brittle economic system. And of that 7-8% that you bring to the bottom line, you got to put some of that back into your business every year, right? Plates break, glasses break. You want to give people things. She told that story because she wanted to illustrate the fact that she put a service charge on her menu of like 4% because she calculated that's what she needed to offer paid sick leave and insurance and other things to an employee group at her restaurant that had never been able to get those benefits before, right? Now, if you do the math, that extra 4%, well, now we're back to 1980s issues, right? So I started to look into this, and steadily over the course of time, like the last, I'll just use my own example, the last sit down restaurant that I owned, the average drink was, I'll make it up, $15, and we had specialty cocktails at $20. Like, people would come in and pay $9-10 for, you know, a keg of some incredible craft beer that we had, you know, $9-10 for a beer. I haven't had a drink in 30 years. I'm sober. So, you know, I was amazed that people would pay literally almost anything for their drink. So we had a certain specialty drink, you know, I mean, because Restaurant 101, make your best, you know, food cost item should be the biggest seller on your menu, right? Same thing at your bar, right? So we tweaked pricing, and, you know, we had some sort of like thing that came in a martini glass that was made with rum that was fantastic. And, you know, we sold it for like $23, and we made a ton of money, and people would buy these on every single, there were ones on every single check, right? We got a lot of publicity for it. It was just this fabulous beverage. However, when it came to our chicken dish on the menu, we couldn't charge more than $18 for it.
I know, it's crazy.
We started experimenting with it, and we were a mid-price restaurant. It wasn't, you know, high-end tablecloth thing. People have an aversion. And I live in Minnesota, right? This is not New York or LA. We're not talking about New York or LA, where there's enough of a population at a certain income status with a certain amount of disposable dollars where they don't look at the right side of the menu. In Minnesota, it's almost impossible to sell a sandwich for more than $10. It's just because people culturally hear like a sandwich.
It's like that a lot around the United States. I think people just have this paradigm that there's this threshold that they just can't really get their head around, paying more than a certain amount for an entree or.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
If you tell someone who can afford it, yes, the truffle supplement on your fettuccine is $45. They're like, okay, if you want truffles, that's what they pay for. But God forbid the chicken dish represents on your menu the appropriate price reflected of the cost that goes in to put that item on the plate. So I am of the opinion, and I've been doing my own little sort of private research on this as I eat around the United States over the last year. I can't think of a restaurant in America other than a handful of the top 5% in terms of price points, right? All those other restaurants in the middle, right, are they're underserving themselves by not pricing appropriately on the plate. And the reason is they can't, because the customers are rejecting it. Now, I will tell you anecdotally, several restaurants have opened up here in Minneapolis over the last year, and they all are charging more because the people started to reject this surcharge, right? I mean, certain things work, certain things don't work. That 3 or 4% surcharge at the bottom that said we're doing this for the money goes into a fund for our employees to allow them. People don't want that. They don't want to see how the sausage is being made, right? They're like, just put the price on the menu. I don't want to, don't give me all these extra charges. I think psychologically it's better to raise your prices. I think we need to have collective awareness out in the public space. You know, all the people see all these empty shelves at supermarkets. I mean, even today I go in and, you know, one day there's just no bread, and the next day it's all filled up, but the truck couldn't get there. We were having supply chain issues, right? And with weather events, we're seeing certain things wiped out, right? The summer before last, all the Colorado peaches were gone because of a hailstorm, right? So we're seeing all these problems around the world with our supply chain, with food. Some of it is COVID related. Some of it is dollars and cents related, but food is going to cost more. And when people, I mean, you know, we're recording this now and I don't know when it airs, but right now inflation is one of the number one consumer issues in America by every single polling. And so can you imagine how many restaurateurs are skittish about actually charging what the food should be priced at in terms of what it takes to put it on the plate? With all of the rising costs, rent and insurance and payroll, we have to pay our employees more and give them more benefits to get them to work in restaurants. We don't have a labor shortage. We have an unwillingness of owners of businesses to pay people a living wage. I'm firmly convinced of that. So to do that in a restaurant and to be able to offer benefits to your employees so that we can further professionalize our industry means that we're going to have to charge more for the food. And that means that consumers are going to have to get used to it. And I think there's a lot of restaurants that are going to go out of business because they don't do that. I think a lot of restaurants are going to go out of business because they do that. They were the first. I mean, it's all those Civil War, or war movies where someone leads a bayonet charge, and all the people in the front die, but their side wins because those people sacrificed themselves and led the charge, and then the second wave comes in and all that. I think in this first wave of restaurateurs, there are going to be some very committed people who are like, something, that BLT costs $16.
Well, and the irony is,
I know anecdotally, there are people here in my office. I've 20 people in 3 different businesses here in my office I'm asking them all the time, where'd you eat? What did it cost? Did you have sticker shock? And there's a couple new restaurants where several people are saying, oh my God, there were 4 of us. It was $200 and it's a casual restaurant.
Yeah.
And I go and I know the restaurant there. There's 2. I know both restaurants that everyone is talking about. They're both new and they're both part of this bayonet charge. They are reflecting what the food they're charging, what it actually costs to put on the menu. And I think chefs are going to have to get creative. We're going to have to use, and I think that's good, smaller sizes of protein, more beans and farinaceous foods. We're going to have to get more creative with all kinds of vegetables.
Smaller menus,
smaller staff, all the rest of that stuff to make this thing work. I think it requires an entire shift in our economic model and what restaurants physically look like.
Right. Yeah. And I've been always saying for years that I think the restaurant industry really needed to disrupt itself because it is it's a model that is like too labor intensive, and it's you want to be able to create jobs, but you want to be able to have premium, well-paying jobs with an efficient model with less waste and a better product at the end of the day. And the irony is that consumers, I mean, you can see when you go to the grocery stores, you can see your grocery bill and like what you're paying for milk and chicken. I mean, how could that not end up in a restaurant on a plate, cooked perfectly, and not be more expensive? I mean, people have to see these costs. Even going to the gas station, I filled my truck up the other day and I was like, oh my God, $70. And I got like 87. It wasn't even any, premium fuel, but it's just getting so expensive. I mean, it's crazy.
I like the way you dropped in that you're filling up the truck, because that makes you a man of the people.
Well, I was considering a Tesla, and then last minute,
no, it's those little things. You were filling up the gas in the truck before you went to your volunteer job, helping the nuns read to the kids.
Right. Well, not ironically. I mean, I was looking at a Tesla.
I'm just poking fun at you.
360.
You're the host, Rich. You're the host. So
well, if you saw the truck,
I'm the jokester. So I get to give you a lot of shit.
If you saw my truck, you would go on a lot longer about it, because I got like huge tires, and I mean, looking at a Tesla and then end up getting this big Dodge Ram. But that's what happens when you take your kids with you shopping for a new car.
It can happen. It can happen. I apologize for fucking with you too much.
Anytime. I love it. everybody, I want to take a second to say thank you to our sponsors. This show is brought to you by the following partners. Meat and Bone. These guys are just doing an exciting thing in the Miami and Florida area. Check out their website. They offer premium quality meats hand delivered to your door if you live in the Miami-Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach area. But also they ship nationally, and you can also visit them at some of their boutique locations in the Florida area. These guys came up to our recent barbecue class, and they brought all sorts of amazing cuts of meat, steaks, brisket. Listen, if you're looking for quality steaks like you would get in a restaurant, check these guys out. They've got some incredible selection and top-notch quality. Check out their website. Also, Ovention Oven. These ovens are just incredible. We've used these during the pandemic. They really helped us kind of pivot and reposition ourselves so that we were able to expand our menu without having to make expensive investments in the kitchen. These ovens offer an innovative solution to restaurant operations, opening up a whole new realm of possibilities with your menus. The Ovention ovens are ventless, they're fast, and operationally friendly in cooking. What we do is we program our recipes in the oven, and our cooks just press a button of the image of what they're going to cook. It's a whole new way of cooking. Check out their entire line of Ovention ovens. And of course, Steelite. Steelite International has remained an incredible partner of Rosendale Collective. They are an internationally world-leading manufacturer of award-winning inspirational dinnerware for the international hospitality industry. They've been a longtime partner of Rosendale Collective, and they're getting ready to sponsor us with some incredible tableware for our new section on Rosendale Online, and we can't wait to see what they're going to come up with. Also, check out Dry Ager. Dry Ager offers a level of unprecedented quality for both restaurant and home dry aging programs. They make the most amazing dry aging meat cabinets in the industry. They are designed with sophisticated technology. They're made in Germany, and you can get incomparable taste of restaurant quality steak in the comfort of your own home. Thanks again to our following sponsors: Meat and Bone, Ovention Oven, Steelite International, and Dry Ager. Now, back to the show. This is great. I mean, we have a bunch of questions, but I love where the conversation's going.
Fire away. We could do a quick fire round with stuff. I don't want to get. Here's the thing.
But I think you've given really great, like, relevant content for people, and they're questions Rich, that are listeners.
No one loves themselves more than I love myself. I know how brilliant I'm sounding right now. But I am a fairly amusing person as well. So sometimes I get on a jag and it's deathly serious stuff. I mean, I've devoted the other change in my business, the last serious thing I'll talk about, and then I'll just be entertaining and funny. I've increased the amount of time I spend doing service work and charitable work. I know that sounds like a backwards thing. Like, I need less jobs. I need to focus more on the 2 or 3 things that are working. I need to do all these things. But in order to go as far left as I want to go, I have to head in the other direction sometimes. It's just how my life has worked. And obviously my sobriety has heavily influenced my look at service work. But I'm on more boards, and I'm devoting fully 25% of my time and money to charitable efforts. Wow. And much the upset of my board of directors and employees, at the company, who are, some of their, they would like to see me spending more time on our businesses.
Right.
But
of course.
I believe that I've been given a platform, and I have a lot of wisdom in certain areas. And so, working with, I'm the new global ambassador for the United Nations World Food Program. I'm on the board of, 5 or 6 different organizations that all tackle homelessness, addiction, AIDS, and sexism, mostly abuse of women in Southern Africa. There's just things that I am just devoted to, that I've sort of increased, because that's simply an emotional wellness issue for me. And I would tell people in our industry, and I know so many people listen to this, the key to happiness and being able to focus and to arm yourself with everything you need to get through your day, to tackle the tough road ahead in your work, is actually not to focus more on work. It's actually to make yourself a better human being. If you make yourself a better human being, your responsiveness, the numbers of hits, you become a 300 hitter in the major leagues, instead of someone who's 250 with the occasional home run. I mean, your percentage of hits, your wellness, it's taking care of yourself by doing things for other people is actually the best way to be successful when you want to be selfish.
I totally agree. And I think it's like a pathway to happiness. I mean, a lot of people, they're work, and they can't figure out why they're burning out or they're not happy. But, if there's a way to have a business, or to have something that you can also fulfill, like a noble cause, or you feel like there's a bigger picture than just like your work or your business. And, I think a lot of people, a lot of chefs and a lot of people, and truthfully, I mean, just because of a lot of people, even like you, where you've kind of used your platform and your voice in a different way. And I think a lot of people now that are in roles where they maybe were always viewed as like a restaurateur or just a chef, or, any industry, but obviously we're speaking about, more from a culinary perspective, that people are seeing like, hey, I got to get involved, and I got to do something. And you have a responsibility. You have a responsibility to your team, or the community. There's so many stakeholders that are really, they're kind of attached to like what you do and the things that you say, which kind of segues into looking at a lot of the media, the things that you've been involved in. One of the things I was really intrigued was with the show, the What's Eating America. And I feel like, you've really tackled some, frankly, controversial topics. They can be, they're hard for, people to really they're sensitive for a lot of issues. But I thought it was great to kind of, see you kind of really dive in and kind of peel back the orange of like what's really kind of happening in the country. Do you feel like with all of those topics, and it doesn't have to be one that you covered on the show, but do you feel like there's anything that is a topic in the country that is most urgent that we need to really address? I mean, right now, on social media, it's just crazy. I mean, I feel like we're in this place where there's so much divisiveness, where people just it's almost toxic, like so many conversations. You look, and I see somebody that's like, maybe they post something that's like really cool, something that they accomplished, and you almost see people instantly like, oh, that sucks. Or you may say something haters. And you're on Twitter, and it's like, they like, who the hell are you to say something like you're a chef? It's like, dude, you have a voice, you have an opinion.
Welcome to my life.
Yeah, totally. Well, that's
Can you imagine how many haters you have?
But I think it's great that I think it inspires a lot of other people. It clears the path for a lot of other people that maybe are thinking about speaking up, or that they want to get involved. And I think it helps kind of encourage other people to do that. But you've got to have some pretty thick skin, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, you don't get into the TV, but I've been on the media side of things for 20 years now. So, and you have to think long and hard. Everybody wants to be on a TV show and everything. Okay, that's great. So when you're going to be on TV, be aware that fully, even if you're successful, 49% of the people on your social feeds are going to tell you you're ugly, you're fat, you're stupid, you don't have a right to talk about that. I mean, it's just going to be awful. They're going to say terrible things about your sex life, even though they live in Wyoming and have never met you. They are going to attack your children, even though they've never met them.
Wow.
I mean, it's an awful thing. And I would remind people, if you're hearing awful things back at yourself on social media, you shouldn't read it. I don't read it. I know it's there because occasionally I read it. And I have someone whose job it is to monitor that stuff in our digital team. But if I had $1 for every time someone tweeted "shut your mouth when you're chewing, you big fat liberal fuck," I would be a very, very rich human being. Maybe I should try to monetize that. Actually, Rachel was laughing. I was like, I should try to monetize.
Yeah.
But I do.
Why not?
I do think we have an obligation to speak out. And look, I said at the top, food people are the best people in the world, and that's because it wasn't people on TV with big platforms or more successful chefs that created this. This has been going on for as long as I have been working in this industry, and it precedes it by 150 years historically in America. Wherever there has been disaster and wherever there has been challenge, wherever there has been a fundraiser of any kind, the first call has always been to culinarians, always. Mm-hmm. And we have been asked to give and give and give without compensation. We never ask for it. We just do it. Right. I remember when Katrina hit, and I'm watching CNN the next day after the storm cleared. Right. And there's like 8, 9, every time they would cut to a chef cooking outside of a restaurant, there was one of my friends in New Orleans, just, hey, freezer and refrigerator are out. We're just going to keep cooking everything on this grill that we're putting up on 2 sets of milk carts. And I'm standing on a bench. We're going to move that steel table out, put a mat over it. I'm going to stand on it. I'm just going to keep cooking food and handing it out. And then 2 days later, once people could get there, I'll never forget seeing a friend of mine from a chef named John Currens from Mississippi. I think that 2 days after Katrina, he was able to drive there and start setting up food in the back of his truck and cooking. We've always been there, always. And even throughout COVID, as our restaurants have been kneecapped, we've been the ones feeding first responders. We were the ones sending sandwiches to hospitals to feed nurses. It's unbelievable. So this is about people on a micro local level whose names you will never know, but they are in our industry, who have taken care of the people in their own communities and municipalities, right? I got lucky, and it is luck. TV is a lot of luck. But to have an international show that's broadcast internationally, so my, Bizarre Foods and all of my stuff that Discovery owns still is broadcast in 160 some odd countries, and now it's all on the Discovery Plus streamer. So it's fascinating. People are tired of me in Minneapolis, right? So I walk down the street here, nobody bothers me. But there's 10 or 12 countries that my show is, the #1 food show, and it airs 5 times a week. I mean, Chile, for whatever reason, the show is crazy popular. Italy, crazy popular. Japan and Korea, crazy popular. I'm one of only 2 Americans who have a show airing on CTV, the Chinese network in the People's Republic, right? So I have a unique, because I'm a recognized person globally, I have the ability to communicate to people in other countries. So aligning with the United Nations World Food Program or the International Rescue Committee that David Miliband, Tony Blair's former Secretary of State, runs, a group that Einstein founded in the 30s. I do a lot of refugee work with them. I'm their voice of nutrition for the refugee community. I'm working on food waste with the United Nations World Food Program and actually planning my first trip to the Sahel in Eastern Africa, a place that is as devastated by drought, famine, death, dysfunction, and political crisis as any other hotspot on planet Earth. It's just that no one cares because there's no oil there. There's nothing grows there, but those people are dying. and it would be the number one story on the news if it was happening in Western Europe or on the Soviet border or on our border, but it's not. It's happening in East Africa. And so I think it's, for me, it's an obligation I have to talk about those things at a national and international level, because I've been graced with that platform. Again, it's just sort of growing where you're planted, right? I didn't do this. I mean, I went out and made Bizarre Foods. That they bought 6 episodes. The numbers were up the first episode or second episode, and then they were dropping down slowly. It really hadn't caught on with an audience. And Travel Channel back in 2006-07, they didn't have any money for marketing or promotion. And the third episode that aired was the one where a shaman in Ecuador, in Otavalo, in the farm country of Ecuador, in the highlands, a brujero, a witch doctor, gave me an exorcism, and we shot it on my lunch hour. It was, by the way, that we had 3 people on our crew, including myself, me, a director, writer, producer, and a cameraman who also ran sound and set up a standing second camera for cutaways. Right.
Wow.
So there were just 3 of us. We're writing the show at night. I mean, we got no money for the first year, and everyone was tired. And I said, let me get exercised. I mean, let's do this. And the crew was like, the crew, there were 3 of us, including me, right? And Shannon, our producer, was like, yeah, let's do that. And our cameraman, who, poor Mike, was just exhausted all the time. He had to schlep everything, we helped, but he's like, no, I want to carry my equipment. We went and I got exercised, and it's the scene where the guy strips me down naked, spits on me, lights me on fire, beats these bushes against my chest. I broke out in hives all over. The idea was to pull these demons out of me, transfer them into the entities that he was, he would spit on me and then pour 150 proof hooch on me and light me on fire, burn all my hair, but whatever spirits came out would burn. And he beat a guinea pig against my chest until it died, and threw it in the corner, threw all the stuff in the corner, and then burnt it and took the ashes down to the river and said, okay, you're exorcised. Well, we cut it. We cut it and edited it, and it aired in the 3rd episode. And it was a pretty funny scene.
Were you scared?
Yes, I was at times. I'm in a closed room with no windows, deep in this house. Now, it was just a little guy there, and Mike, my cameraman, is big. And I kept thinking to myself, if anything happens, it's, there's 2 of us. But there's a machete on the table. I don't know what it's there for. And I'm like, and by the way, this 80-year-old witch doctor is so high on coca leaf. I mean, I was just like, the whole thing was surreal. But the next morning after it aired, and I'm waiting to hear from my agent, oh, the ratings are down, they're not going to pick up the show, blah, blah, blah. Because they make decisions very quickly in TV. The phone rang, and instead it was a booker from the Jay Leno show. She had seen the clip.
Really?
Yeah. And just by luck, flipping around the stations, couldn't stop watching it, told Jay they got a response from the network, and they sent them the 20-second clip of the thing so that Leno could take a look at it. And that Friday I was on the Leno show, and without that, I don't happen. I'm doing, that
was like the tipping point, like
it was huge. The next week, the ratings
Amazing.
go off the charts, and it never stopped. And, it was an incredible blessing.
That's amazing.
But
so it sounds like the exorcism worked.
I had a really good year that year. Maybe I should go back and see him. But the point that I'm trying to make is that I've just been my success is by seconds and inches. I don't make it. That's just how it is with everyone, right?
That's amazing.
I think so.
Yeah.
It's seconds and inches, and I think we owe a tremendous debt to whatever gets us anywhere. And some people have tremendous influence on their block, some in their neighborhood, some in their city. I'm lucky that my platform is television, and it's international, and so I'm able to do some bigger things. But it's not more work than what any of you are doing in your communities to help. So I mean, helping is helping, and you just, everyone I think has to do it. I think we have a tremendous risk, to get back to your question, in this country. I think voting rights, and it's something that we covered in What's Eating America, is the biggest issue that we have in our country. I think without voting rights being taken care of, it doesn't matter what we do about anything else. I believe that we have an element within one of our political parties that is advancing a fascist agenda. When you have the former Speaker of the House in Newt Gingrich going on Fox TV and saying we should be arresting people at voting booths and that journalists should be jailed, that is the stuff of tin pot autocracies and fascist dictatorships historically around the world throughout this and the last century. And I think it all begins and ends at the voting booth in America. That's always what's made our great republic different than so many others. And I just want to make sure that, over the course of the next 9 months, as we lead up to the midterms, that I'm paying a lot of attention to that. I just think voting is something that in our country has always been denied to a vast majority of Americans. I mean, just look at all the Jim Crow laws in the South, the lengths to which Black and brown people and other people of color and indigenous people have been denied access to the voting booth. Returning citizens, people coming out of jails and institutions, should have the right to vote. The Constitution says you have to be 18 and a citizen of the United States. I mean, that full stop. And when we look at this false narrative of voting problems, they are non-existent. It's single digits of votes in states, and in some years in national elections, it's a couple of hundred votes that are improperly cast, or is the work of someone who just doesn't know what they're doing, or maybe is a little old and goes to two polling places. There is no voting problem in America. It is just that there is a minority of people who have tremendous influence on elections, who understand that if it's one person, one vote in America, their party is done for forever. And I don't understand for the life of me why the idea of competing on the issues has been lost in this country. Maybe we never really had it. And instead, it's about disenfranchising voters to ensure that a minority party in America remains in control, one that, by the way, also today stands for a racist and fascist agenda. So, and I say that as a student of these things. I mean, I could cite chapter and verse on this, and I'm happy to debate anyone on it. We devoted an entire episode, like I said, of What's Eating America to this, which was, for those that didn't see it, an MSNBC show that I did that tackled the 5 big political issues in America through the lens of food, immigration, health and wellness, addiction, voting rights, et cetera. By the way, you talked about what was different, how COVID affected me. I'll leave you with this story. So we make What's Eating America. It's the highest rated special series, non-news program, special series in the history of MSNBC. 25-year history, nothing is rated higher. It grew audience from episode 1 to episode 5, right? Which is the big thing people are looking for. Does it hold audience? Does it grow audience, right? Mm-hmm. Has great ratings, fantastic. But does it do what it's really meant to do, grow audience and hold audience? So it does. So the show airs in February of 2020 for 5 successive weeks into March. So guess what happens the week after? Then the network has 6 months to pick it up for a second season. Now, it's a no-brainer. It's your biggest hit. The network put it on Sunday nights because they wanted to compete with CNN, right? And it was because CNN had already embraced this sort of narrative storytelling with Tony's show, with Lisa Ling's show, with W. Kamau Bell's show, Stanley Tucci's soon-to-be show, et cetera, to have adventure journalism of a different type as their Sunday night tentpole. And we were going to be MSNBC's first foray into that. Well, COVID hits and it becomes nonstop COVID news. And what happens? News networks have the best 18 months following in terms of ratings in the history of television. Followed the COVID thing. Remember, summer of that year is the Trump impeachment. Then there's the Biden-Trump election cycle. Then there's the horrific 2 months between November 3rd, when everyone voted, and January 20th, when Biden was inaugurated, that included the January 6th insurrection of 2021. So the network just said, sorry, we don't have time, can't do it, whatever, and gave us the reversion rights to it. But now the news cycle is making so much money, there isn't room on that. And obviously other news networks will never take a show that was on another news network, right? So, and it's just, I'm not complaining. It's just ironic how you can literally hit a home run for a client, right? Which, client in this case was MSNBC. We were the vendor, my production company, making this incredible series for them. And which, gained national praise. I was so proud. It's the work I'm proudest of in my whole life. And yet, kind of like Zimmern List winning an Emmy for a show that doesn't exist anymore, for a network that doesn't exist anymore, we create this incredible series in an atmosphere where it's impossible for anyone to pick it up for a second season. Now, I'm literally not complaining. I'm smiling and laughing as we're recording this. And the reason that I am is that that's how life is, right? Yeah. So everyone has to get used also to the idea that life itself is something that we navigate by the seat of our pants. Anyone who has a roadmap and they're paying too close attention to it is going to miss the forest for the trees. You have to be able to think on the fly and adapt and move and shift and change, regardless of whether you're making television or doing restaurants, selling hot sauce, whatever it is. For entrepreneurs out there that are listening in the food space, everything is filled with uncertainty. Life is uncertain. I don't think I'm going to drop dead of a heart attack when I hang up the Zoom with you guys, but it's entirely possible, right? I mean, anything can happen to any of us at any time, good or bad. And so the key to life, my wisdom, is you have to have a skill set designed to navigate uncertainty, because that's just the way life is. You never know when your kid's going to come home after having a fight with his best friend, or, do something in a class that he regretted or she regretted, or some outside thing beyond your control affects what happens to you today. Life is uncertain, and it's why it has to be lived moment by moment with a lot of astronaut reasoning used every single day.
Wow. Well, that was great. We want to thank you for spending the hour with us, and we could literally go on and on. We'll have to bring you back for a future show. I
promise to be funny and entertaining the next time. I will not get serious at all.
This is good stuff, though. I think, the thing is, the one thing in America now, and really around the world, I feel like people have lost trust from so many places. And people are just yearning for like authenticity and somebody's story. There may be things that they can relate to or not, but trust is so hard to find. And whenever you have a voice that you feel is like compelling and authentic, people want to hear that. They want to hear, people want to hear about the ups and the downs, because I feel like that's really, as you mentioned, that's really what life is really all about in our career. And as you mentioned, you got to, in these uncertain times and in life, do the best you can to be nimble, because you just don't know what's around the corner. But Great stuff, Andrew. Thank you so much for spending time with us. Is there anything else that you want to mention or anything
The only
else we
thing
didn't
I would
cover?
tell people is we have a ton of stuff at everything I do is at andrewzimmern.com.
Okay.
So go to andrewzimmern.com. It's there's no paywall. Enjoy the thousands of recipes and stories and interviews and videos and everything that's there. But across the top bar, you can navigate to my Substack. You can navigate to, my YouTube channel. You can see all things Andrew Zimmern there in one beautiful place.
Awesome. And what if they want to see the show, the What's Eating America? Because I think there was some really...
I think it's on Peacock right now. It's on the NBC streamer. Family Dinner right now. My current show is on Magnolia Network and the Discovery Plus streamer. All of my work for the last 20 years is on the Discovery Plus streamer, except for What's Eating America, that's on Peacock. I have a couple new shows coming out this year. One that's going to be announced in a couple months that I'm doing on Netflix. Another one that I'm doing on the Outdoor Channel, which is I'm finally doing a stand and stir cooking show. But it's Andrew Zimmern's Wild Game Kitchen. I moved to Minnesota and I had hunted and fished a lot in New York, but as a New York City guy, that's sort of limited to 1 or 2 days a year. But then I got out here and everyone is like, hey, come on duck hunting with us, or come on, deer hunting with us. And I really, really love it. And I love fishing. And of course, when you're out with your friends, everyone looks at it's like, hey, let's cook this up for lunch. And they all turn and look at you. And, it's a really exciting project. It's actually something that is more fun than I could have ever imagined.
Awesome. And I know everybody can also follow a lot of those updates on Instagram and all your social media feeds. So
sure, you can join in with all those people that love and hate me.
That's awesome.
Well, we love you, and definitely thanks for everything that you've done.
My pleasure.
Thank you so much.
And make sure connect with us if you're in the Miami or DC area next time. We'll get you out to Roots or the Culinary Lab.
Or if you make it to Southern Italy.
Rachel, you're there. Yeah. I hate to say it, Rich. That's a really nicer. Where in Southern Italy are you?
I'm in Calabria right now, which is about 2-3 hours from Sicily.
Yep. Where in Calabria?
I am in.
I've traveled a lot.
You've probably been there.
Near Silverato.
Fantastic
Montepeone. Yeah, I'm at the Italian Culinary Institute right now.
Fantastic part of the world.
Beautiful.
Yeah, it is. Everybody have a great rest of your day.
Thank you so much.
You too, Andrew. Thanks
so much.
Take care.